The world has shifted. We went from the age of industry to the age of information, and now we're in the age of influence. Social influence and social capital is the most valuable capital we could ever have. Grant is giving me a really hard time. He was like, why doesn't anybody know who you are? I was like, because I don't want anybody to know who I am. He was like, I would challenge you that everything you want is on the other side of exposure. He was like, well, guess what? People actually find me and beg to work for me. And he just kept like going down that path. And I was like, wait a minute, he's right. That's when I had to get okay with the personal brand side. It's become a part of my life. I've been building a personal brand for 2 years. The benefits have been incredible. Maybe I'm still in the honeymoon period, but they've far outweighed the negatives.
My greatest fears were trapped in the light. I didn't want to be seen because I was just actually scared of it. I was deathly afraid of big audiences. For me, it's a connection to God is by exposing me and all the things I'm most afraid of and giving away all the lessons I've learned. They may not be a lot, but it's everything I have to give. It's really shown me like what my highest and best use is, and it's not hiding behind the scenes. It's actually out in the light. It's really a gift to be able to give that away. If you can help one person that you wouldn't have helped by being quiet, then you probably should do it.
The question we get to oftentimes ask ourselves is, what impact is my daily activity having that is ultimately making somebody else's life better?
All right, you guys, I'm excited about this one. I've been looking forward to this interview for a while. We got Eddie Wilson on the show here today. Eddie, welcome. Thank you so much for doing this. I don't think you need
Thank you. Thanks for having me on.
I don't think you need an introduction, but for our audience, just to kind of catch up the type of caliber of man we're dealing with here today. Eddie has 120 companies owned under his belt. Now, that in and of itself is just incredibly rare. It's not something you hear every day, someone that's had ownership in over 120 companies. But 90 of those have been exited. It's like a dream for someone to just exit one company. So to have 90 exit, you're dealing with a very rare person here. 4,000 plus real estate doors owned, 200 plus companies invested in, and managed over 6,500 employees. These numbers are jarring. And this is what's going to be really cool, to get inside the mindset of the person that has achieved so much. Do you feel like you've achieved that much in your life, Eddie?
No, not at all. To me, it's been more of a journey. It's been, I'm so end goal focused that I really don't think about like these steps and milestones until like I'm sitting here on a podcast with somebody and they're reading that stuff. Amazing. And it's like it's just not a part of my daily activity.
Sure. Yeah. When did you know you wanted to be an entrepreneur? Like, what did that start? What did your start look like? How about that?
Yeah, so I just didn't fit well in corporate, and my dad was an entrepreneur, and my mother was also an entrepreneur. So both of them had started companies. Wow. I watched my father at a young age like leave the security of his job, start his own company, and really he did such a great job at like helping me like dynamically like understand fear, right? Like what do I want? What am I willing to give up? What am I willing to sacrifice to get to the end goal? I watched my dad do that, which was the greatest gift my dad could ever give me, you know, and then watch my mom do it. So I don't know that I ever just like had this like moment of like, I got to be an entrepreneur. I think what it was I watched my parents, I watched them succeed, fail. I went into a career path where I was in big corporate, was succeeding, but felt like it was empty. And I wanted to do something of significance on my own. And I wanted to be able to control my own environment, control my own outcomes, and that really was the catalyst for it.
Sure. Yeah, you mentioned fear. I didn't know you were going to go right there. This is good. How would you describe fear in really the connection between achievement and fear itself?
Sure, yeah. I mean, there are two great motivators, right? Fear and love.
Sure.
And watching my father at a young age, with a lack of success, and watching him struggle, and you know there were Christmases that you know we had very, very little, you know, and it was like if anything, and watching him struggle with that fear, and to me always being present in my life really gave me a really interesting dynamic with fear, like because what I look, you know, like where my dad right now still is very risk adverse. He doesn't want to risk anything, you know, like the way we do real estate is very different. The way we do business life is very different because he still had that moment he doesn't want to go back to. He doesn't want to go back to that broke moment. He doesn't want to go back to that moment where he feels like he's let his family down. I look at it from a very different vantage point, which is he didn't let me down. Those were some of the greatest, those Christmases where he spent time with me and presents were maybe absent. My dad wasn't. So I have a great relationship with my father, and I look back, and so like my relationship is like, what's the worst that can happen? We lose everything and we spend some time together. You know, it's like, I don't, so it was like his relationship with it, navigating life as still a good father, even though he was struggling, really gave me such a massive foundation to work from. And so for me, you know, fear is something that I try to push out of my life every day, because fear-based acts, you know, like there's two ways to ensure a bad decision. Number one, make a decision based on fear, because fear is running from something rather than running to something, right? Like love is passionately pursuing something. Fear is running from something. You never make a good choice when you're making it out of fear. Number two is a lack of information, right? Like, you know, truth, knowledge. You know, if somebody's not willing to tell you the truth, you're going to make another bad decision, right? And so for me, that's where fear has a big relationship with achievement. If your achievement is based in you running from something, right? Identity, issues, esteem, you know, whatever that is, then you're doing it for the wrong reason, and fear ultimately controls you. And fear is a bad companion, because it's going to give you a bad or a poor result. But if you're achieving something, if your intent is to achieve in order to passionately pursue something, right? There's an end state, there's a purpose tied to it, and achievement is a milestone along the way, then achievement can be a good thing, you know? But I think it really comes down to motive. And I think you test those motives to determine, is this a love-based action or is this a fear-based action?
Yeah, the name of this show is Man on a Mission, and something that's really prevalent this chapter in my personal life is mission. That's why I made my whole thing about Man on a Mission. Being mission is the kind of key catalyst there, but it wasn't how I started. I actually started for fear. I don't know if it's the same for you, but I find with most entrepreneurs, they are running from something, and then it turns into mission. It doesn't necessarily start with that in all cases, and a lot of times there's a lack of clarity, but there's a great fear that's driving someone. Was it similar to you in any sense, or did you have clarity in the beginning?
My clarity came when I stepped away from my corporate environment. My corporate environment was all fear-based. Like I had success, I had all the achievement, I had money in the corporate environment. I actually had my first exit in corporate. And so, but what it was like this identification of mission and purpose. You know, purpose being the end goal, the mission on how to get there, you know, is what changed everything for my life, that then actually had me step outside of what was comfortable, which then allowed me to then have a relationship with fear. Like, am I gonna stay over here where it's comfortable and I have pseudo success, or am I gonna actually chase mission and purpose, which is what actually drove the activity of like going into entrepreneurship.
Right. You seem incredibly young to have so much wisdom and have so much actual success. What a foundation you built. You've got to have some good systems that I have to ask you about. You cannot have achieved so much so fast being so young without some incredible systems, some incredible processes. What would you describe as maybe something that's unique about you that it's allowed you to scale so much?
Yeah, the uniqueness is, I believe, the process. I am process oriented, and I think that sometimes we get put into a box. It's like, oh, they're a visionary, or they're an operator, or they're this or that. I think oftentimes the greatest entrepreneur is the one who can take action on their own vision. And to me, what I realized in coming from corporate was, I'm a visionary by nature, so I'm a dreamer. But in corporate, they don't like dreamers; they like dream makers, right? So you couldn't talk about your ideas unless you had a theory, something proven, and you could actually actuate it, right? So for me, that the benefit of going through corporate was like they really squashed that in me. And it's like, so when I came out, it was like I wasn't just this dreamer entrepreneur. I was a dreamer who knew that there had to be some disciplines to allow these things to come to actually to practice. So when I was building the first, I had 30 companies, and I really was tapped out. I couldn't figure out how to get to the next level. And I was using operating systems and all this other, I was listening to everybody. I was Green Belt, Six Sigma. I was, anything I could do to try to learn how to like operate more efficiently. And that's when I really just dove deep into like there's competence and there's conscious competence, right? There are people that know what make them great. And I just decided in that area, like it was going to be a conscious competence. I'm going to figure this out and I'm going to create a system that I can replicate. So I did, and I created, it's called the Empire Operating System. It's all my companies run on it. There's about close to 3,000 companies that operate on it globally now. And I didn't build it as a product. I built it as a greasy wrench that I could go back to operate my companies, to give us common language, common measurements, common governance, common KPIs, like all of it, right? Meeting cadence, communication. And so I created a system called Empire Operating System that really has these kind of fundamental truths. And that's what allows me to really scale. The fundamental truths, the basis of it is this, that every company exists in one of 5 phases. And if you know what to do when, it actually allows you to take the next step. So the 5 phases of business are startup, then perseverance, right? Like perseverance is kind of pre-profit. Then you get into viability, then scale, then succession. So the crazy part about that whole thing is like I broke down every phase of business, determined what the next steps were to get to my next phase. So instead of just arbitrarily saying like, usually people use it as like revenue plateaus. Well, once I get to 10 million, once I get to 50 million, once I get to 100 million, to me, the revenue plateaus are just a scorecard. The process and the systems are the actual phases. So when you get like, I don't stay in a startup phase for longer than 1 year, like oftentimes it's 4 or 5 months. My entire goal in life is to get my companies into viability because then it gives me more options. And I start planning for succession all the way back at perseverance. So it's like this very, very specific pathway. And then in that I build systems and tools and, all of that inside of every phase of business so that I can move quickly through them. So now the reason I'm scaling and exiting so quickly right now is because I can determine on the roadmap, here's where we are, here are the next 20 steps we got to take. Once we get to this milestone, here's the next 20 steps we got to take, right? And so it's just like I've systemized it all the way to the point of succession.
Sure.
And succession could be selling your business. Succession could just be putting somebody else in to operate it. It could be, whatever. There's a million ways for succession in the business.
It's genius. So you license this out? Is this something that someone could buy? Incredible.
Yeah, I do. I license it.
I'm going to check it out.
And then we've got maybe 60 or 80 coaches that license it and teach it, so I've also licensed the coach just so that they can go out and use it.
Very cool. Yeah. And so what kind of businesses could utilize it? Any kind of business?
Yeah, that's the fascinating part is I made it because when I had 30 businesses, I went from 30 to 86 businesses in 3 years. Crazy. With that system. God. And then I also went from about 50 million in revenue to over $1 billion in revenue. And then I exited 76 of those in 2019 for about 1.2 billion. Incredible. And so, but that's because the system. Now, I had mortgage companies, insurance companies, e-com, product-based companies, service-based companies, like tech-based companies. So it was like, it really was everything because I really had a holding company. But then I was like, I got to build something that's universal enough that we all speak the same language. If they're a SaaS-based company or we're selling mortgages over here, it has to be universal. Genius. And so because I built it universally for me, it's become a universal tool for everyone else. That's
cool, man. This is really good. This is a joy to talk to you. Is there any businesses you avoid? Just curious.
I avoid, there's really no vertical I avoid. The businesses I avoid are the ones that have bad products or services. Okay. I really like distressed people companies, and I love distressed capital business or companies, right? Like, if you have a good service, if you're a good dentist, right, or you have got a good dental practice or good basic customers, but maybe you just don't have enough money to expand. That's a perfect business for me.
For sure.
If you have employee problems and you're just not efficient, great business, right? But if you've got 1 million bad reviews online, I'm out, right? Like I'm not going to overcome a bad product or service, right?
Makes sense,
so typically I love distressed capital businesses are the easiest, right? Because capital is what I have the most of today. And so it's easier to step in and solve those problems.
Amazing. Yeah. So what is something that you look for specifically in a company? You just identified it, but how important is like a founder, if you're investing, is that, to me, I always thought that was probably more crucial than anything. If I'm looking to put capital somewhere, do I believe in the person behind it?
Yes. The jockey over the horse all day long, for sure. But I look at companies differently. Most people, when they think about investing in a company, they think of it as like a VC type company. They're investing in this founder that's got this new idea or whatever. Right. for me, the way that I look at it is my private equity thesis is you build community, you do data science on the community, understand what they want, need, desire, and then go acquire or create to serve them, right? So like we have the Aspire Tour. In the Aspire Tour, we found that we now have a company called Money Is, which really takes like accredited investors, people that want to invest in private equity, understand financial literacy when it comes to investing, into a community. So we got like 1,300 members in Money Is. And what I realized is everything we teach them, their CPA firm will not support. So in all the data science we've done is like, I could probably pick up 600 brand new clients right now with a CPA firm if my CPA firm had the knowledge and would act on what I teach in the community. So I'm in full-on acquisition mode right now of CPA firms. You know, it's like, because to me now I have a ready-made audience. So that's where I win so fast, is I actually build community first, then I do the data science. So I'm not out just arbitrarily going like, that looks like a good company or that looks like a good company. It's like, no, I know that this group of people over here that I have, you know, that know, like, and trust me, this is what they need, and I'm going to acquire it to serve them.
Sure. What's next for you? I mean, you got to, with this point in your life, you really have so many options, and it seems like, to me, just from my vantage point, you're working harder than ever. You're putting as many hours now as you were in the very beginning. I don't know if that's true or not, but what's next for you?
Yeah, I love work. I mean,
I see that.
I don't understand the whole work-life balance thing. Like, to me, balance is work, and I love it. Like, when you love, I love life. I love work. Like, I love everything. Like, it's just like I'm just enjoying myself.
It's the game of it all, right?
So it's the game, but you know, it's the relationships in the game. It's like I'm so blessed, and I feel so blessed to do what I do. It's like, why wouldn't I push it? You know, like, I love every day. So, so for me, what's next is I've fully turned a lot of my efforts towards humanitarian good. So we started a foundation close to 10 years ago called Impact Others. And the reason I'm building the private equity firm I have now, which we just started this one 18 months ago, we have about 27 companies underneath of it already. It's already exploding, doing really well, is that everything I do has a give back element to it. So I had the big exit in 2019, really started doing like orphanages, feeding centers, clean water projects, building sustainable businesses around the world. And you get to the end of your own resources, you can sell a company for $1 billion and still run out of money because the need in the world is so big, you know?
Never ends.
So for me, it was like, how do I create something that's just going to keep churning capital into what I'm really passionate about, which is making impact on the world. And so I'm building these companies now to just fund that even more. So I'm having a blast just building these companies and then taking a portion of their revenue and just going out and doing all the nonprofit stuff around the world.
Sure. With so many companies on your belt, do you have any favorites?
Yeah, I absolutely. I mean, I love the next one I'm buying all the time. Like, you know, it's like, it's hard not to love the next one, or the one you're chasing. But I have a coffee company called Because Coffee. I would travel the world for my nonprofit, and we'd come back to Atlanta. I lived in Atlanta up until about a year and a half ago. And it just had, the coffee culture in Atlanta sucked. And so I would always bring back like A-grade coffee from around the world. And I was like, I told my CFO one day, I was like, I'm going to build a coffee company. And he was like, he's like, you've told me that 10 times. I was like, no, I'm actually going to do it now.
Okay.
And so we actually import coffee from 9 different coffee regions. We roast in Atlanta, and now we have retail stores. The retail stores are called Myth and Legend Coffee House, and they're super high end. Good. We only serve the top 2% of the world's coffee, A grade. It's amazing. All house-made syrups. We got a chef that like crafts all of our drinks.
Incredible. I love this.
We're on our 5th store, and we're trying to add 5 more here in the next year or so.
I just had a coffee. It was Civics, or it's a type of animal that it's like they defecate it and then they roast.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think what it's called. But it's
just it's like a civet, like the civet coffee, civet. And it's
it was expensive. Yeah, it's like, I think I bought a little thing. It was like $500 for like maybe like, I don't know, like not a lot, but I had to. It was kind of.
I've tried. I'm like that. The funny thing is when you're in coffee, people are like, "Have you tried this like monkey poop?"
Sure,
coffee?
there you go.
Like what? You know, like So yeah,
it's because of the novelty.
It's good. It's super crazy.
Do you guys sell the rarest coffee in the world? Will you sell that in your store, in your retail stores?
There's not enough Yeah, so we sell the top 2% of the world's coffee. Like it cups at a score of a 90 or above.
Sure.
Like we serve really, really high-end coffee in all the stores. But the highest, typically the highest rated coffee is from a region in Panama called Boquete, and it's called geisha coffee. It's a white-leafed coffee bean, and the beans are really light, and it almost is aromatic like a tea. We don't sell it because there's not enough. There's not like the margins are really difficult, and it's really hard to get it, and you have to pretty much buy an entire crop from a farmer a year in advance to get it. And then it's really delicate coffee, so it's really easy to burn in the roasting process. And then you'd have to charge it per pound. You'd have to charge a couple $100s a pound. And so it's just, there's just not enough market for it. Like I've had it, it's great coffee. I've bought, way more than I should of it. It's good, but it's like, it's just not, and it really doesn't taste similar to any coffee you've ever had. So it's this weird acquired taste.
Sure. Interesting. So we kind of started tapping into it. You can tell you light up about companies that you're getting involved with or that you're actively building. But what are some of the most profitable, the companies that you've done really well with? Just curious, or your perspective on the companies that do really well, that have good margin, or that you most enjoy.
Yeah. My biggest exit ever was insurance, but insurance is kind of boring. It's like
not sexy.
Nobody really wants to.
Sure.
But it's a big
But the money's
exit.
there for sure. Is that hard though? Is that a hard business for you, considering the diversity of businesses that you have?
Yeah, you have to find a very specific niche, and you got to serve that niche and really. But I built a company called Think Realty, which is a real estate investment space, like a media platform that, again, community first. Found out that the greatest need inside that community was an insurance product that insured single-family residential investment properties. We became the largest insurer of those type of properties in the world, right? Like. It's just, so instead of trying to go out to the general marketplace going, hey, we do property and casualty insurance, like it's red ocean. Sure. And so you got to create that niche. But for me, the high volume ones, and it comes down to, I've exited so many companies that it's always the ones that I get the biggest multiples on. And multiples always come for three reasons. It's like, if you want to increase your multiple in any exit, number one, you have to have IP. You have to do something uniquely different than anyone else, right? It could be how you do your data. It could be your technology. It could be anything. Number two, you have to have an operating system. If you don't want to get stuck in the business when you sell it, you better be able to hand over a manual to say, this is how you operate it. And if you do it this way, it'll succeed, and you can hire somebody to do it. And then thirdly, it's either top line revenue or bottom line revenue. So like you have to know your numbers. And so for me, the sweet spot in all of that is typically tech, because tech is typically low personnel, high multiples, high efficiency, high margins. And so my biggest exits, not by volume, but by percentage or by value, have always been tech. Yeah. And so what I believe right now is that I can take companies that are typically getting a 4, 5, 6 times EBITDA on the exit. I can techify that company. I can infuse technology, an app, a community, whatever it is, and go get 5 or 6 times EBITDA more than I would if I just sold the old boring type of company. Sure. So really where I'm at right now is I like to techify everything I'm doing to get the higher multiple and create the efficiency. Sure. That's where I'm usually playing right now. It doesn't really matter what it is.
I have a feeling that right in this lane is where most businesses that are trying to scale are failing the most. It's really in a lot of what you just disclosed, and there's some place that they're missing, whether it be in the operating system and their people. There's some place in there. But when you look across the board at businesses that are struggling, what's the one thing that you see as common that someone could fix right away to make it instantly more efficient inside their business? Because I see so many entrepreneurs and they're slaves to their business.
Yeah, managing their people properly, like it's always a people issue first.
Totally.
It's when I walk into a business, I could tell in 2 minutes where their efficiencies are missing, and it's almost always people. Entrepreneurs are funny. We like to we get enamored with our own successes, so we just try to replicate ourselves over and over and over again in a business, and all we do is just maximize the issues that we create, right? And so so what you do is like you go in and then once you have enough revenue, then you think, oh, I'll just throw bodies at problems because we don't know how to create processes or systems. So we replicate ourselves, which gets us some level of success because we typically are the producer. So we go replicate ourselves, we get more production. Then we're like, okay, now I have revenue. Now I'm just going to throw bodies at it. I'm just going to hire this guy to do this and this lady to do this and this to do this. And then we got this big mess because our personality is all over the business. Totally. Our deficiencies are all over the business. And then now we're just throwing people at it. And then there's conflict and there's cultural issues, right? And so because now what you're doing is you're like, I'm just going to throw money at this problem and I'm going to hire the opposite of who I am to fix this problem, but I have no process by which we're all governed by. So, it's always people and processes every single time. And, 90% of the time it's people. And so I oftentimes, with Empire, we get called for a lot of clients, sometimes big, sometimes small. And periodically I'll go out with one of the guys or I'll chime in just because I'm always curious how the system's doing for them. And it's funny, there's been a lot of times with founders and owners, I'll say, hey, you're going to throw this system and process at it, but let me tell you where the actual problem is, right? It's actually you, and we got to fix you because I can fix the systems and processes all day long, but if we don't fix you, there is no success, right? Like you're still going to go sideways on the systems and processes. So, it's always people, and then on the heels of it, it's systems and processes.
Yeah. So do you think more often than not, it's getting rid of people is usually is where the solution starts becoming finite? It's actually less people.
Yeah.
Bottom line.
Usually it's less people with defined roles, commitments towards results, right? And then visibility into it, right? Like, is there actual accountability here? And that's what I find oftentimes is like we find efficiencies almost immediately. We use a system called predictive index. Predictive index is a way that I've put maybe 20 or 30,000 people for myself through predictive index. What it does is it gives it doesn't show personalities, it shows drives. What are you driven towards? What's your end goal? What's your end state you're trying to get to? And then it's like, if I can align their end state, their own desires, then I know what motivates them. Then I can put a pathway in front of them that they're actually motivated to fulfill. And then I just align all the parts necessary to get to success. So we always start with people first.
I can already tell just being around you, I'm getting smarter. I feel smarter being near you.
Well, that's good.
Everyone needs an Eddie in their life. I'm telling you, you got to have someone around you that's smarter than you. And that's the thing. I think a lot of these entrepreneurs, they're the smartest guy in the room. There's always someone that is light years ahead of you that they're so important here. Speaking of that, so personal brand, I mean, with Aspire Tour, so I don't know what stage of the game your voice and your name, you really started diving into personal brand, but I see you as a personal brand. You're on stages now. You command large audiences. Knowing what you know now, how important is personal brand in alignment sort of with your highest and best use in life?
I always resisted it.
Yeah,
I thought it was the unnecessary thing. And I built my career on building big brands, and I was the person behind the brand pushing the brand. But the world has shifted. Like we went from the age of industry to the age, of information, and now we're in the age of influence, right? Like we're in this like social influence and social capital is the most valuable capital we could ever have. Andrew and I, my business partner, we were down at Grant Cardone's place and just talking business, and Grant is giving me a really hard time, and he's teasing me, and he's saying, he's like, you've had a $1 billion exit. He was like, why doesn't anybody know who you are? I was like, because I don't want anybody to know who I am. And he was like, that brings a whole lot of problems to me. He was like, I would challenge you that everything you want is on the other side of exposure. And I was like, no, I think everything I don't want is on the other side of exposure. He was like, well, let me challenge that. He said, do you need more capital? I was like, well, I mean, maybe not for my investments, but yeah, for my nonprofit. He was like, well, if more people knew about your nonprofit, you'd get more capital. He was like, how about, do you need better employees? I was like, well, yeah, of course. I'm always growing, always scaling. He was like, well, guess what? People actually find me and beg to work for me. He was like,
I work for free.
My exposure drives, he was like, how hard do you work to find good people? I was like, well, really hard. And then he was like, now, and he just kept like going down that path. And I was like, wait a minute, he's right. Like everything I want on the other side of exposure, because what I would have done in the past, I would have built the Aspire Tour, and I would have sat in the back room. I would have let everybody else,
Sure.
stand on stage, tell their story, and I would have reaped the benefit of it. But to me, I was missing out on the benefits of being on the stage.
Absolutely.
And so that's when I had to get okay with the personal brand side.
Sure.
The irony of this all is I had a large advertising agency that just built massive brands. Some of the biggest personal brands that are on radio and TV today, like we had a hand and helped build. So it's like I was just back there going, yeah, it's good for you,
Sure.
but not good for me.
Yeah.
And today it's become a part of my life.
Yeah.
Like I turned down so many podcasts and speaking engagements and everything else. Like when I had the big exit, and people were like, "Oh, why don't you come tell your story?" And I was like, "No, I'm good. Like I'll just go do this again somewhere else.
Yeah.
I'll just go sit in the back room
Sure.
and do it." But really, I owe it to Grant, for all the craziness that is Grant Cardone. Like
Sure.
he really sold me on that idea, and I was like, he's right.
Yeah.
And the benefits, I've been building a personal brand for 2 years. The benefits have been incredible. They've far out. Maybe I'm still in the honeymoon period, but it's like they've far outweighed the negatives.
Sure.
Sure you get the
There's
people
negative.
that
Yeah.
talk crap and whatever. It's like, but it really, in comparison to what I've received because of it, it's night and day.
Yeah. Well, and I'll say this: there's a lot of suffering out there, and this is one of the things that I had to come to grips with. Ed Milet's was my mentor, and he's the one that really challenged me personally, stepping. That's why I'm doing this podcast. But really, all this is what brought me to some of the coolest people I've ever met, people that I'm inspired by, like you. It's really challenged me in different ways. My greatest fears were trapped in the light. I didn't want to be seen because I was just actually scared of it. I was deathly afraid of big audiences. I still, when I'm in front of an audience, and I'm doing this all the time now, I could feel like the audience can feel my heartbeat. It's in my throat. And there's actually something really beautiful about it, because it's the thing that I think connects me to so many people. And I have to dig so deep into my soul to do it. But what I realize is this is for me, it's a connection to God, is by exposing me and all the things I'm most afraid of, and giving away all the lessons I've learned. They may not be a lot compared to someone like you, but it's everything I have to give. It's really shown me like what my highest and best use is, and it's not hiding behind the scenes. It's actually out in the light, and it's not arrogant. It's really a gift to be able to give that away. If you can help one person that you wouldn't have helped by being quiet, then you probably should do it. But that's just my connection with it. So I don't know if you can really speak to that, or if you had fears trapped in it that you really had to confront. But you seem like such an incredible person all around. I can't imagine this was of any kind of fear of yours, or maybe it was.
Well, the fear was more of all the negativity that just came with it, and
expose yourself.
And I didn't. I'm hyper focused on my end goal, and so it felt like it was just going to be this distraction. And I thought this exposure is going to lead to ego, and then ego is going to lead to a distraction that's going to prevent me from getting to where I wanted to go. And what I found is it was that voice, it was what I just spoke about there, that actually has become so much a part of my messaging. Like, you don't have to beat your chest. You don't have to be the alpha male. You don't have to be this demonstrative leader. I don't have to call people out and scream at them and stuff like that. I'm a quiet leader, but and in my quiet leadership, but you put my results against anybody, right? And so it's let the results speak. And so in that, it's what that does is it removes ego, and it gives people that really push away ego a voice that oftentimes is squashed by the big loud alpha social construct that we feel like, oh, maybe all of us have to go that path, right? And I think that there's a place for them. I don't think that's not a negative to the guy that's out there doing that either. I think of them oftentimes as the drill instructor.
Sure.
You get to boot camp and the guy's sitting there screaming in your face, full alpha. If you're broken or you need to be broken, you need that guy, right? But also you need somebody that's going to sit down and reason with you and think through processes and listen to your ideas and get super deep and strategic. And it's and for me, it's if you look around my organizations, I've got people that been with me for 15 years that are super deep, super strategic, super purpose driven, and it's and I just want to show the other side. That's become a big part of it. And the other part of that I've really enjoyed is the faith element, right? what God means to me and what that experience is like. And you can actually have this like personal experience with faith, and it's okay to talk about. And so, it's just like, to me, it's like becoming that authentic me and just letting that out.
Sure.
Has caused so much resonance, which has given me joy and fulfillment that I didn't know was possible. Like somebody coming up and being like, hey, let's talk about this, or could I buy you a cup of coffee because I'm really struggling, and getting to sit down with people and pour into their lives. Like I didn't know that was out there, like I was in my bubble just doing my thing,
Sure.
So it's been incredible.
Yeah, and I think in a world where children, are being indoctrinated. I'm not trying to turn this into a political thing, but the truth is, you see the trajectory where this is headed. They've removed God from school, and you just see how it's affecting all these institutions. We learned a lot through COVID. I would argue that places like Aspire, the things that you're doing, that you're now stepping into, this is what keeps the world going around. You're going to need good guys to step up to the plate and use their voice to kind of combat sort of the mainstream Hollywood, this narrative, the media, all this noise from all these powerful sources. To have a billionaire like you that can step up to the plate and has this much knowledge, sort of be in his truth and not be so afraid, like that's real. That's why I like Grant Cardone. Like he'll call it out, and again, like so many of these people are bought and sold for because they make money on the bottom line to the most powerful sort of entities in the world. It's all these people like you that actually have a lot of power, and now you're starting to flex it in unique ways. And I want to support it. I want to contribute to it. I want to grow into it myself. And but it's thank you. You guys inspire me.
Awesome. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Isn't that the point?
Yeah, that's the point.
That's it, man. You guys are doing such good work. I would love to keep this going. I know your time is incredibly valuable, and that this is a gift. Maybe ask you a few more questions here before you go, Eddie.
Sure.
I know that that mission's really important to you, obviously. Do you mind sharing your mission with us? Do you have one within your companies, or sort of a core value that you guys all believe in?
Yeah. We have a set of core values that govern how we do business. Those core values are honesty, integrity, and passion. And that's carried out through a series of ways. But honesty being that I just want truth, because every good decision comes on the other side of truth, right? Good or bad.
Absolutely.
Integrity is doing the right thing when no one else is looking. And I want to build an organizations that have people with high integrity, that you can just count on them. They're just people you can count on. And then lastly, passion. I want people to find, like, to me, my big goal, mission, purpose, has to be big enough that everybody else's mission, purpose fits inside and aligns with it. And so my vision has to be big enough that the people in my organization, their vision fits in it, right? Or else they'll outgrow me, they'll move on, and I'll have to support them in theirs. And so, to me, mission, purpose, vision, like, they have this really interesting dynamic and relationship. The mission to me is how I'm carrying out everything happening towards purpose. So I kind of have to go back to purpose and identify purpose real quick, and then I'll talk about mission. So purpose really to me is to be of my highest and greatest use on this earth to make a massive impact on as many people as I can. And so I do that in a multitude of ways. But to me, it's really pointed at people who cannot help themselves, people who cannot impact themselves. And oftentimes it's, we carry it out locally, but for the most part, we're in 108 countries now doing this at scale. And for me, there's just such massive need out there, and such huge opportunities. So then the mission is that everything we do on a daily basis is laddering into making an impact on someone else. And so the question we get to oftentimes ask ourselves is like, what impact is my daily activity having, right, that is ultimately making somebody else's life better? And I say this to my staff all the time. True leadership comes in one of two forms. Good leadership is taking somebody from point A to point B and being successful. Great leadership is taking somebody from point A to point B, being successful, and improving who that person is, like making an impact on that person. So we measure our greatness by the impact we have, right? I measure my greatness, our greatness internally on the impact I'm having on my employees. But then it has to ladder all the way down to this orphan that's sitting in Guyana, and his life is getting better because the people inside of my office are living at their highest and fullest potential. So every meeting we bring back impact others and who we're impacting and what stories are happening there. I take people on trips. I bring business owners with me. For me, that's what I believe I'm called to, is to fulfill my purpose, but in doing so, it's to inspire others to look for purpose in their own lives. Like I think we're all uniquely called and created to do something in this world. And I want to empower people to do it, but I think the greatest way to empower people is to do it yourself, right? Like a lot of times people aren't looking for motivation. What they're looking for is a roadmap. Okay, what does this look like? How do I do this? How do I use my business to do what you're doing? And so we take trips all the time, bring a bunch of business owners with me, and I show them like, hey, look, like Guadalajara, Mexico, I just got back last week, and there we have a feeding center, an orphanage, a college, a sewing center, and a TV studio.
Wow.
We're building sustainable businesses that make enough revenue off of sewing cultural dresses to actually feed over 1,000 children a week. We right now have 22 kids in the orphanage, and we have 53 kids in the college, which is more like a trade school.
Wow.
And it's the wildest thing because the sewing center, the business itself that we're building, is actually funding all of it, and it's being employed, and we're actually employing girls we've rescued from sex trafficking. So it's the wild, these ecosystems we're building. We're doing this in Laos and India and Pakistan and Colombia, you name, we're all over the world doing this. And to me, that's that mission, everything I'm doing here locally in Florida and at Aspire, all is about alignment towards that purpose. And to me, that's what it's all about. That's where I get all my fulfillment and joy on.
That was such an incredible answer. Oh man, I should end there because it was so damn good. I just have a few more questions that I think are pretty profound. You can always tell when you're around someone that's really well traveled, kind of been there, done that. They have a lot of wisdom. You just radiate so many good things that this is really enjoyable for me. Really looking at America and sort of the direction this country's headed. I'm just curious, for someone that's seen so much around the world, you've seen it from unique vantage points, where do you think this country's headed? I'm just curious because there's so much negativity in the mainstream marketplace. There's so much anxiety. You feel it everywhere. You look at inflation. Middle class seems like they're shrinking. I just feel it, don't you? Where are we headed, man? I feel like we need guys like you. I just feel like you guys are the mindset of someone like you is someone that we really need to start really calling on as leaders that step outside of business a little bit. You know what I mean? And I don't know, maybe there's a higher purpose for you, brother. I don't know. But what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, this is not a political statement at all, but until we get some good leadership, success rises and falls in leadership, and I believe that to my core. And so you look at this country and you go, where is the leadership, right?
It's crazy.
This is not a knock on Trump or Biden.
Sure.
It's a knock on both of them. And that's this. It's is this really the best we have to offer?
I know.
Really, this is the best. This is the best that our country has to offer,
Crazy.
Right? Like Trump, love Trump, don't care about Trump, like Biden, whatever. In the end, I look at both of them and I go, I'm just shocked that this is all we have to choose from, right? I got friends that are 10 times more brilliant. Who have more passion and more leadership and more ability. And it's the problem is that I think the issue is that mainstream media culture, it loves to tear that down. Somebody that really probably should be sitting in that seat is so afraid that they lose everything by sitting in that seat.
That's the problem.
But in the end, it rises and falls on leadership. We have not had, where are the leaders in the country? Where are the ones that are going to step up and through the hard times are going to make the rough decisions and who are going to stay out of the mess and are not going to lead with greed, and they're not going to. It's just it's a lack of leadership, and it's frustrating because you look around America, you look at the companies and the businesses and the amazing people that we have, and it's like, geez, why does our political interest not align with our capitalistic interest, right? Like, at some point, somebody's got to step up, you know? And so I feel negative towards where we're headed, because it's like, where's the leadership that's going to pull us out of some of these horrible habits, horrible situations, horrible circumstances and economics we're in?
I will say, though, it's things like Aspire, even though it's kind of a far shoot from it, more of this going around is sort of, I think, is going to be the foundation for where children can leech onto, where all the things where government may be failing. I think private industry now has an opportunity to start rising, and we'll just settle it. We'll just 100%. Fix it ourselves. But I think
you have to, right? Like, if you're going to rely on the political structure or educational system to solve our problems, we're screwed. You know, like, if our hope or our future is inside of the colleges today, we're in trouble, because
it's scary.
The people teaching our children are not people that have either A, done it, or B, have a motive to create success and values in our kids, right? Like, they're there to tear down the morals of the moral fabric of our children. They're there to question everythbe thing that they've been taught.
America's bad.
I'm good at kind of a Socratic method, right? Like, question everything, sure. But in the end, like, give them a solid moral foundation to operate from, you know? And that just doesn't exist today.
Sure.
It's and so to me, I agree. Like, there needs to be 10,000 more things like Aspire that pop up, because they have to be, you know, like, they have to understand there's a different path. And you know, people here, like, we have very bright people. Like, I don't subscribe to this idea that we're just all sheep, we're all stupid, everybody makes bad choices, and we all follow the piper. It's like, I actually think there's some really great people here, and I really feel like there are a bunch of people that really want success, and I think there are people that really want truth, and they're searching for it, and they're seeking for it, and they know inside there's like this fire burning going, there's got to be something better. And, you know, I think we just need a lot of groundswell movements like Aspire that pop up that, like, try to show a different path, because then at least it allows them to combat the political structure, the media structure, and the educational system that we have.
100%. Your gift, man. I'm so grateful for you doing the show. I'm grateful for everything you do, all the business about, all the lives you've impacted. It's incredible, man. If someone wants to connect with you, where would you send them?
Yeah, my good friend and partner, Dan Fleischman, this year, he convinced me that I should answer all my DMs on social. So at least through the end of this year, I'm committed. Amazing. So right now, Eddie Wilson Official at, you know, Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, all the above. TikTok. I still answer all my own DMs, and
amazing.
It's been great to connect with everyone.
Good for you, Eddie. And Dan is a hell of a guy. I love Dan. Dan's done so much for me, and I'm going to continue to support you guys, and I'm going to help do everything I can to kind of align myself with the force that you guys are, and then try to inspire more people behind me to get on this bandwagon, because this is the stuff, again, that makes the world go around. So thank you, Eddie. I appreciate you so much. I'm a man on a mission.